You know, right. I kind of wish I had been able to time out that. Speaking of the quest for more money, because that would be a better transition to our next movie. So I
Oh,
guess you could just call me Unforgiven.
yes.
From the ridiculous to the sublime.
Yes. Yeah, I think this was my suggestion because I've always been interested in this movie, but I haven't had the chance to watch it. Um, this was kind of, I mean, would would you call this Clint Eastwood's magnum opus?
I was just about to say I've only more recently started watching Clint Eastwood movies. Um, kind of a so what I'll say is that it's kind of a hole in my movie watching from when I was younger, and just
Hmm.
only fairly recently had friends who were into him. Um, so I don't necessarily know that I'm in the position to say magnum opus, but it's definitely it would definitely be a contender. And I can't think of what other movie he had the such a big part in. Maybe Gran Torino. I keep meaning to watch that at some point.
Yeah, oh, yeah, I need to watch that one too.
So at the very least, this is we can say this is his Western magnum opus because
Yes.
it,
Yeah.
it actually won Best Picture, which
Yeah. Yeah.
what surprised me when I found out about that little factoid. Only three movies that are westerns have ever won Best Picture.
Mhm.
One from 1931, a long gap, then Dances with Wolves in 1986, and then this one in 1992.
Wow.
Which means that the Academy, during the entirety of the period where westerns were like the genre, basically treated it the same way they treat superhero movies today.
Yeah, it's just like, whatever.
Common people's fare. Piffa.
Yeah. I wonder if in the next 10 or 20 years, if superhero movies finally die off and then somebody makes a superhero movie that one won't win a Best Picture.
Yeah, that's very possible.
Yeah.
Um,
But yeah, so this movie, this movie came out at a time when westerns were basically dead. Um,
and this wasn't even the first time that Eastwood had tried to revive westerns. I think I remember there was some movie I watched in the late 70s or the 80s that was not very successful because the market had just moved on despite his best efforts.
yeah.
I can't
Um,
think of what it was off the top of my head, but
when did was it Pale Rider?
Pale Rider, I don't think it was Pale Rider I was talking about, but that I want to say that
Uh,
was Pale Rider movie.
Bronco Billy. Was that it?
That might be the maybe. I don't know if I've seen it.
Yeah, Bronco Billy
Oh,
was
Pale Rider was
1980.
1985.
Yeah.
Oh, maybe that's the one I was thinking of.
Yeah.
Anyhow, so so Unforgiven, it was successful. It was acclaimed critically, won an Oscar. A
Mhm.
complete pile of garbage. No, no.
Yeah, yeah. No, no,
No.
no, no. This is a really good movie. This is,
Yes.
yeah.
Uh, so, so the
So we
base,
got yeah.
it's very interesting because it feels like it actually, I would almost argue it's a series of fake outs.
Yeah.
Uh, because at least I've seen enough westerns over time, and specifically enough of the types of movies that Clint Eastwood tends to be in, that I was taken aback by almost every plot point. Because on the surface, it
Yeah.
almost seems like the type of movies that you would see a Stallone or like another classic movie star coming back to do, like, oh, he's an old broken down man. He has one last chance to ride in the saddle again, and he's going to go out there and be amazing.
Yeah.
No, no.
No. No. Yeah. So the movie takes place in 1880, and Eastwood plays a retired gunslinger named Will Mooney. He retired because he. Oh, hey, D Rhino, good to see you.
Hey, man. It's the classic love of a good woman story.
Yes. But and she passed away from smallpox, and so now he's raising his son and daughter on this little hog farm, which isn't doing too well. And
Daddy, I think 2 more of the pigs got the fever.
yeah. And but then a kid.
Well, actually, we've jumped a bit ahead.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So the opening of the movie is surprising on a number of levels. First off, for just being kind of brutal.
Yeah.
So there are two cowboys are at a brothel doing what you do at a brothel when one girl who had been brought in from Boston at a great expense by the pimp or
the proprietor of the establishment.
Yes, proprietor of the establishment is the polite way of putting it. Makes fun of one of the cowboys for not being well endowed, and his response is he pulls out his Bowie knife and proceeds to slash her up.
Yes, and the madam of the ladies doesn't take too kindly to that.
She takes even less kindly to it when the sheriff, Little Bill Daggett, played by Gene Hackman, in a very nice turn, decides to because the proprietor had gone to great expense, he decides that rather than just whipping the 2 boys like he'd originally planned, he decides to treat it like a property crime, and 5 horses to the proprietor will make up for the loss.
Which is like, what?
That's like, he's not the injured party here, really.
Yeah. You call that justice?
And then, like you said, the madam doesn't take kindly to it, so they put in a collection for $1,000 for a bounty,
which back then was a lot of money.
Yeah.
And so then we go back to
so back Eastwood. To our story already in progress.
Yes, because I jumped ahead a little. Eastwood's paid a visit by this 20-ish-year-old wannabe gunslinger. Calls himself the Schofield Kid because he uses a Schofield pistol.
Played by I don't know if this is Himes Woolvet or James Woolvet.
Yeah.
Jimz.
Yeah, I've never heard of him, never seen him in anything else besides this.
His IMDb stops in 2008, but it does not appear that he is dead. So I'm going to guess that he decided to just move on with himself.
Yeah. Probably that, I made a movie with Clint Eastwood. That's probably going to be the highlight of my career. Just only good. But he goes to Eastwood to tell him about the bounty, and of course he greatly exaggerates the injuries that happened to the young lady. Which is kind of a theme with this movie that. Stories about people and events tend to get exaggerated the more they get told.
Yeah, that's very much you're right. You hit the nail right on the head. That's the theme right there, because the kid exaggerates his own the story. The kid exaggerates his own skills. Another character who shows up for the bounty, a dapper British gunslinger named English Bob, played by Richard Harris, has a newspaper or has a novelist along with him to record his doings and add it to his book.
Yes,
which is itself full of a bunch of nonsense.
Yeah. And then and when English Bob shows up in the town, Gene Hackman, the sheriff, little Bill, he makes him give up his guns because you're not allowed to have guns in this town. Which I guess little Bill has never heard of the Second Amendment.
Little Bill would tell. Little Bill is interesting because early on, it's okay. The way I was kind of expecting this to go, I didn't expect Little Bill to continue being a character, because I said, okay, this is going to turn into a hunt for these two cowboys.
Yeah.
Um, and so we're going to leave this town behind, or maybe Little Bill is going to try to chase them down, like be on their tail. No, the movie actually is kind of a limited set of sets,
Yeah.
and he's the real villain.
Yeah, which I was not expecting.
No. Also, we should mention that they also recruit Morgan Freeman playing Ned Logan, another old associate of Bill Mooney, aka Clint Eastwood.
Yeah.
Because he's a great sharpshooter.
Yeah. Yeah, and so yeah, that's basically the crux of it. And then they get into the town, and of course it's raining as they're getting in there, and I think Eastwood catches like pneumonia, looked like.
Yeah, so some sort of awful disease.
Yeah. And so they kind of have to take their time, trying to find these two cowboys. And of course, you know, you got Hackman there, being being a jerk about everything.
He's a little tyrant. And what's really funny about it is that if you look at all of them, okay, like there are basically four real gunfighters in this movie, like four classic gunfighters: English Bob, Little Bill, Bill Mooney, Ned Logan. Three of them have technically gone legit because Bill Mooney moved on. Ned Logan has a. By the way, Ned Logan, aka Morgan Freeman, in case you're not keeping up, he has a much nicer plot of land than Clint Eastwood did.
Yeah.
Like it has water access. He can grow multiple types of. He has a nice garden. It's just instead of being out in the middle of nowhere with a bunch of sick pigs.
Yeah.
English Bob is still active as a gunfighter, but it's clear like he's clearly just going around collecting little bounties and using his gunfighting skills to hassle people.
Yeah.
But then it seems like Little Bill Daggett is the most legit of them all. But he's actually a little he'd basically be like a little tin horn dictator.
Yeah.
Who just it's like instead of being part of a posse, he took his posse, turned them into the constabulary, and just took over a town.
Pretty much, yeah. Yeah, and what was I was gonna mention something else. And yeah, so the basically the whole basically with Eastwood's character with Bill Mooney, that he's avoided trying to go back to his old life because he doesn't want to dishonor his late wife's memory, and he doesn't partake of the ladies, and he doesn't drink. Yeah. And which is very important because certain things happen in the movie where all of that just kind of goes out the window.
Yeah. So kind of the spoiler light before we get into too much depth on it. This move. So if you had things like The Man with No Name that were kind of a response to like the overly heroic cowboys of the previous decade or so.
Yeah.
That kind of like were subversive in that way. This is like super subversive. Because like in those Man with No Name movies, I would say that he is still, I wouldn't necessarily say heroic per se, but like he's always like the lesser of all evils. And he still kind of is in this one.
Yeah.
At the same time, like, a lot of misery happens because of a little bit of like an event outside of or a moment of passion that just leads to a lot of unnecessary death when you get down to it.
Yes. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, this movie's, I mean, I definitely recommend it for anybody. Even if you don't like Westerns, I would still recommend it.
Right. Because it's very grounded, and it's just it's well shot. Everybody's really good in their roles, including characters like I would say Gene Hackman as the sheriff is a major highlight, just because he's able to, like, he believably goes from kind of jovial and fatherly to extreme rage at the drop of a hat.
Yeah. And yeah, Hackman was always really good at that. Just kind of being real, at one moment being like, oh, hey, hi, how you doing? Smiling and yeah, hey, and then just being a total prick. Excuse my language.
You're excused. So it's currently streaming on Max. So if you want to watch it, that's a good place to do so.
Yes. Yeah.
All right. Spoiler time.
Yes.
So I think that you were saying earlier that a big theme of this movie is how it's how most stories are full of nonsense, or like most stories are exaggerated in the retelling.
Yeah. Yeah.
So one clear example of that is so the woman has a few slashes on her face. I would say that it's like she has some scarring, but it's not like she's disfigured or anything. Now, like for a lady of the evening, like that's going to lower her market value, which sounds awful to say, but that's, the premise of the movie.
Yeah.
That's why the sheriff treated it like a property crime. Instead of it being like an actual assault on a human being.
Yeah.
But like when Eastwood is told the story, he is basically told that now in that one, I believe that it was like he was told that he had slashed her eyes and ears.
Yeah. And cut her boobs off.
Okay, so he was told that.
Yeah.
See, I thought he had exaggerated it again, but I guess not.
Yeah.
Also, harsh language in this movie. I'm not going to repeat the harsh language here, but like I was just about to say, wait, that's harsh language.
Yeah.
People should probably know about that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, so it's like it exaggerates in the retelling. But also what's interesting is that there's definitely some symbolism here. You find out part of the reason that the Schofield kid wanted help from these, from a beaten down old man, is because he actually he's very nearsighted.
Yeah. Yeah. He can't see, more than, 10 feet in front of him.
Yeah. He claims I can see up to 50 yards, but he's also a complete liar. So
yeah. There's a scene there where Morgan Freeman was like, oh, because Morgan Freeman was really a good shooter, and he points up at the sky and he says, well, I could shoot that hawk up there. And then you look up at the sky and there's no hawk up there, and the kid's like, oh, I could shoot that hawk.
There ain't no hawk or a twa.
Yeah.
Sorry. There's a joke that's gonna age this podcast.
Yeah. Ooh.
But so there's something about, to my mind, that like him being so short-sighted when what he wants is to join this awful life of deprivation and murder and violence and bloodshed and all that bad stuff is very, I'd almost call it on the nose symbolism, but it's very appropriate.
Yeah. Yeah. And of course the other part of it too, with English Bob, within his biographer, he's writing all these stories, and of course, Hackman beats him up and throws him in the jail cell, and then little Hackman, little Bill, is telling him, like, most of those stories, oh, that's BS, he didn't really do that, or
let me tell you the real story.
Yeah.
Which of course, yes, because the sheriff is totally
right, he's totally
a reliable source.
Yeah. He couldn't possibly be a liar.
But since the biographer is W.W. Beauchamp, played by Saul Rubinek.
Yeah.
Who seems vaguely familiar, and he has a pretty stacked IMDb. but I don't recognize any of his roles. So I'll just call him. I'll just assume he's just a character actor I've probably seen in something without realizing it.
Yeah, he was on a show that I watched called Warehouse 13.
Oh yeah, I've seen a little bit of that.
Yeah, and yeah, he's been around a lot of. I think he's Canadian.
That would make sense. That would explain why he's in the Blackberry movie.
Yeah, yeah.
He's
yeah.
but clearly like he was willing to jump. He was willing to jump teams as soon as a better story came along.
Yeah, yeah. Um, but yeah, then they of course when they eventually encounter the Cowboys, they take care of them. But Freeman, Morgan Freeman, he tries to shoot him, but he just he's at that point in his life where he's like he can't take any more lives.
Yep, he lost his nerve.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is I compared this earlier to the type of back in the saddle movie that you see a lot. Like I would even say that like it's kind of similar to the structure of Commando in a way, just to bring up a kind of a silly movie. But you have the retired fighter who is forced to come back for one last romp.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I can see the similarities there. Yeah.
Yeah. But this is absolutely not treated as anything glorious or great. Like
no.
Bill Mooney becoming the gunfighter again is a slow transition that almost kills him several times over because he's a broken down old man.
Yeah.
And I've seen Pale Rider where he is literally a instrument of vengeance, sent either a demon, a dark angel. You can debate what he is in that movie.
Yeah.
but Clint Eastwood may have never seemed, and I've also seen like a couple of the Dirty Harry movies, some of his other action roles. I have never seen him seem so much like a spirit of righteous, cold vengeance as I have in this movie.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Because when he's back in the saddle, because they basically Morgan Freeman's character ends up dying or ends up getting killed by little Bill Daggett because he's torturing him for information to try to figure out where Bill and the Schofield kid are.
Yeah.
And they just set him up in a coffin outside the brothel as a warning to everybody else about what happens if you break the law. And he comes in and just unleashes holy hell.
Oh yeah. And it's glorious. Yeah.
Yes. And it's just what I particularly like there is in the aftermath, you have the biographer saying, well, an experienced gunfighter will always go for the most dangerous target first. It's like he says it with such authority, like he knows anything that he's talking about, just because he's talked with a lot of people. And that felt, no, I guess I just got kind of lucky that way.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, this it's you mentioned the violence in the movie being not really like glorified, I guess. Which I guess is that's something that Eastwood actually purposefully tries to put in his movies, is that despite what people might think about him, he's really not big on violence, and he tries to show the consequences of violence. That it's not a pretty thing.
Right. Like, I mean, the only good that comes out of this violence is he got the money to make a new life somewhere else with his kids.
Yeah.
But that's cold comfort, considering that he lost his best friend, which means that his best friend's wife, Indian woman, is now a widow.
Yeah.
Actually, were they married? I realized I'm not sure, or if they're just living together.
I don't know if they were married or they're just living together. I don't know what their arrangement was.
Yeah. But it also kind of, when you think about it, like I said, it was a moment of passion by one cowboy, resulting in the death of let's see, yeah,
1, 2, 3.
roughly a dozen people,
Yeah.
give or take, maybe.
Thereabouts. Yeah.
Um, and really, like, did it actually accomplish anything? Did it bring the girl's face back? No,
Mhm.
not really. No.
Yeah.
Um, in fact, if anything, it probably hurt their business because now the town will be thrown into chaos and they no longer have their boss. So
Yeah. Because the boss was, I think, the first
the first to die.
first to die. Yeah.
Yeah, because he's like, all right, who owns this place? Because of course they had Morgan Freeman's corpse outside on
Yeah.
display.
Yeah. But
Yeah,
I mean, this is this movie is a classic for a reason.
yeah.
And
Oh,
yeah.
it also has a great line that I've seen quoted many places where when after the Schofield kid actually kills somebody, you were talking before about how Clint Eastwood doesn't actually like violence that much.
Yeah.
And that was actually a great moment. Like I loved the performance and writing in that scene because he went from overjoyed, yeah, I killed him. Yeah, I killed him, basically, is the
Yeah.
progression.
Like, oh, I killed him.
And that's where Clint Eastwood is like or is like I'm going to paraphrase here because I'm not great with quotes for this type of thing. It's a heavy thing to kill a man. You're only taking away everything he is, you're taking away everything he could be.
Yeah.
Which, as soon as you mention that about Eastwood, like, okay, yep, that's that moment. That's the thesis of the movie.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what's funny is that now that I think about it, the two cowboys who they went after,
Yeah.
outside of that, again, like what I'm just going to call a moment of awful emotion,
Yeah.
uh, they don't actually seem like that bad of guys by the standards of the age.
No, they're especially the one that wanted to give the horse to the girl that the woman that got attacked.
Right? He clearly felt bad about it.
Yeah.
I don't think and I think that they accused the one friend of helping cut the girl, but wasn't he trying to stop his friend?
Yeah, he was trying to get her. Yeah, he was trying to get him off. Yeah.
Yeah, so like, man, there's a lot of this. I think this is one I could see myself rewatching in a few years, just because it really there's layers here,
Yeah,
which I
there are.
appreciate.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Yep, for firm recommend. Great movie.